My name is Nora Bennett, and I was 34 when my sister stood beside our grandmother's memorial table, looked at me over a vase of white lily, and told the entire family that Grandma had left me nothing. Lauren did not whisper. She held a worn photocopy in one hand and spoke with the kind of certainty that makes people stop asking questions. My mother went still. My uncle lowered his eyes. A cousin I had not seen since college touched my arm and said she was sorry, as if grief had already decided which one of us was allowed to belong. Lauren expected me to argue in the funeral home lobby. She expected tears, accusations, or a desperate request to see the paper she had tucked beneath her coat. I gave her none of that. I thanked her for telling me what she believed, stepped outside into the cold March air, and listened to a voicemail that had arrived before the service began. It was from Wellington Federal Bank. The estate services officer, said my grandmother. Eileen Bennett left a seal på the bank vault. My name was listed as the designated family contact for its opening, together with her estate attorney. The message was careful, formal, and impossible to misunderstand. This is a family conflict story about betrayal, inheritance, and quiet revenge. It is about a sister who assumed the loudest version of the story would become the truth, and about the bank vault that held the original documents she never knew existed. If you have ever been spoken over by someone who sounded certain, stay with me. Sometimes certainty is only a performance. Sometimes the truth is not in the person holding the room. Sometimes it is waiting behind a steel door, in a sealed envelope, with a date, a witness, and a name no one expected to find. Before I tell you what the bank vault revealed, I need to explain why Lauren believed no one would question her. Before I take you back to the beginning, I want to speak to the person listening who has spent years being described by someone else. You do not have to interrupt every false story while you are still gathering the facts. You do not have to turn pain into a performance simply to prove it mattered. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay calm, keep your records, and wait until the truth has a place to stand. If this family betrayal feels familiar, write the word truth in the comments. And if you enjoy calm drama, stories about family conflict, quiet boundaries, and the moment a hidden document changes everything, subscribe for more stories like this. Now, let me take you back to the Yellow House on Hawthorne Avenue, to the woman who taught me that love and evidence were never supposed to be enemies. My grandmother Helen lived in a narrow yellow house at the end of Hawthorne Avenue, across from a small park, where the grass always looked green after rain. Her porch had a wooden swing with one chain that squeaked, and her kitchen smelled like coffee, cinnamon, and the hand lotion she kept beside the sink. She was not wealthy in the way people imagine when they hear the word inheritance. There was no mansion, no private driver, no collection of diamonds hidden in a wall. But Grandma had built a careful life. She and my grandfather had paid off the house decades earlier. After he died, she lived simply, saved steadily, and never confused looking comfortable with being unprepared. Every Wednesday after work, I stopped at her house. At first, I brought groceries. Later, when I became a patient financial advocate at the regional hospital, I brought the leftover energy of a day spent reading forms, correcting billing mistakes, and explaining insurance language to families who were scared enough to miss what the paper actually said. Grandma understood that kind of work. She believed confusion could become expensive if no one slowed down long enough to read. She kept a blue ledger in the top desk, drawer beside the kitchen. It held dates numbers and sin small needed. Sometimes it listed a birth date. Sometimes it listed a contractor's estimate. Sometimes it recorded money she had lent to someone who had promised to repay her when life got easier. Why do you write down everything? I asked her once, when I was 17. She tapped the cover of the ledger with one finger. "Because memory changes when people feel embarrassed," she said. "Paper does not." I did not understand then how important that sentence would become. I was the quieter granddaughter. I was not the person relatives noticed first at a party. I did not walk into a room with a story already ready to tell. I liked order. I liked making lists. I liked knowing where the extra batteries were and which bill was due first. Grandma never made me feel small for that. She said steadiness was not the same as being invisible. "You see what other people skip," she would tell me. "That is not a weakness, Nora. It is a kind of care." Those Wednesdays became our rhythm. We ate soup at her little round table. We watched old black and white movies. She asked about my work, not because she understood every detail, but because she understood that helping people navigate confusing systems mattered. Sometimes I helped her compare utility bills. Sometimes I simply sat with her while she did crossword puzzles. When my father died after a brief illness, Grandma's house became the only place where I did not have to be useful immediately. Everyone else asked what forms needed to be filed, who had called the funeral home, which relatives still needed directions. Grandma made tea, put a blanket around my shoulders, and said nothing until I was ready. That was how she loved me. Not loudly, not for an audience, carefully enough that I could breathe again. Lauren's relationship with Grandma was different. It was not loveless. I need to say that clearly. Grandma loved my sister, but Lauren arrived in bursts with a new idea, a new crisis, a new relationship, or a new version of why the last plan had not worked. She could make a room warm in minutes. She could ask a question that made someone feel interesting. She could make an ordinary weekend sound like a movie scene. Grandma enjoyed that brightness. But after Lauren left, she often opened the blue ledger. I used to think she did it because she was disappointed. Later, I understood she did it because she wanted the truth to survive the mood of the moment. Lauren was 3 years older than me, but for most of our childhood she seemed much older because she was so certain of herself. She knew how to make adults laugh. She knew when to cry. She knew how to tell a story in a way that made her the center without sounding as if she had asked to be. My parents loved both of us, and I do not say that to soften the story. I say it because favoritism is not always a clear declaration. Sometimes it is 1,000 small decisions. It is who gets the extra chance, who gets believed first, who is excused because they are under pressure, and who is expected to understand because they are the responsible one. Lauren became the spark. I became the steady one. At holidays, relatives said those labels as if they were compliments. But being the steady one meant I was expected to absorb disappointment without showing it. When Lauren missed a deadline, my mother worried about her stress. When I missed one because I was working double shifts, my father asked why I had not planned better. When Lauren changed college programs for the second time, my parents called it exploration. When I asked if they could help with 1 semester of books, they reminded me that independence builds character. I learned early that competence can become a trap in families. Once people believe you will survive anything, they begin handing you things they would never ask someone else to carry. The first time I saw the pattern clearly, I was 10. Lauren had volunteered to organize a school fundraiser. She forgot to turn in the money envelope and panicked the morning it was due. When our mother found it in Lauren's room, Lauren said I had borrowed it to buy art supplies. The lie was simple. It was also ridiculous. I had not even been in her room. But Lauren cried before I could speak. She said, She was tired of being blamed for everything. My mother looked at me with that familiar expression, not anger exactly, but exhaustion. The kind that asks a quiet child to make the problem disappear. "Nora, just tell us what happened," she said. I remember standing beside the kitchen table, staring at the envelope between us. I knew that if I argued, Lauren would cry harder. If I stayed quiet, everyone would decide I had nothing to say. Grandma was visiting that afternoon. She had been sitting in the living room, listening without interrupting. When the conversation ended, she found me in the backyard, pulling at blades of grass near the fence. "You did not take that money," she said. "How do you know?" She pointed to the envelope in my hand. "Because," she said, "you used it yesterday, but the receipt inside was dated this morning. The truth leaves little marks." I waited for her to go inside and correct everyone. She did not. Instead, she sat beside me on the porch step and said, "There will be times when you cannot make people see what they are not ready to see. That does not mean you should stop noticing. It means you learn the difference between defending yourself and collecting the truth." That became our private language. Notice, keep track, do not confuse silence with surrender. As adults, Lauren's stories grew more polished. She worked in event planning, then social media sales, then a boutique partnership that lasted less than a year. Every new beginning came with a reason the last one had failed. A bad manager, an unreliable partner, a market that did not understand her. Sometimes those reasons were real. Sometimes they were not the whole story. My parents helped where they could. A car repair, a security deposit, a credit card payment when a client vanished. By the time I was 30, I could have guessed the exact sentence that followed every new crisis. "Lauren just needs a little support right now." Grandma never said Lauren did not deserve help. She only believed help should be named honestly. One night, after Lauren left with a check for an overdue rent payment, Grandma opened the blue ledger. She added the amount, wrote the date, and pressed the pen into the page long enough to make a small dent. "I do not want this to become a scorecard," I said. "Neither do I," she replied. "But I do not want anyone to say later that support never happened." Love gets confused when people are afraid of numbers. At the time, I thought she was protecting herself from being misunderstood. I did not know she was protecting both of us from a future argument that had already begun to take shape. The year before Grandma died, my mother had surgery on her shoulder. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough that she could not drive for several weeks. I rearranged my work schedule. I picked her up from appointments, filled prescriptions, and made sure the house was stocked with the foods she could manage one-handed. Lauren visited twice with flowers and a camera-ready smile. She posted a photograph of my mother on the couch with the caption, "Taking care of my brave mama." Relatives filled the comments with hearts. My mother looked happy in the picture. I did not begrudge her that. But I had been the one who had spent the morning arguing with the insurance company over a charge that should never have been there. 2 days later, a family friend asked my mother whether Lauren had been staying with her full-time. My mother sighed. "She has been such a help." I was standing beside the pantry with a bag of groceries in my hands. I remember how quiet the kitchen became inside me. I could have corrected her. I could have explained that Lauren had been there for 2 hours and I had been there every day. But I knew the correction would turn into a debate about tone. It would become another chance for everyone to say I was keeping count. That night, I told Grandma what happened. She did not tell me I was overreacting. She did not tell me to be grateful for what I had. She set down her tea and said, "Being unseen is not the same as being unimportant, but you must not Let people make you grateful for disappearing. It was the first time I allowed myself to admit that I was tired. I was tired of being the person who handled the work nobody wanted and then watched someone else receive the gratitude. I was tired of being called sensitive whenever I objected. I was tired of being told that family peace depended on me swallowing one more thing. Grandma listened. Then she opened the desk drawer and showed me a folder I had never seen before. Inside were copies of receipts for the home care aid, pharmacy invoices, and notes about the days I had driven her to appointments. There were also letters she had received from Lauren asking for help. Nothing dramatic, nothing cruel, just enough to show a pattern: who had been present, who had asked, who had followed through. Why keep these? I asked. Because people may remember love differently, she said. But when money, property, or responsibility enters the room, memory gets very creative. I felt uncomfortable looking at the papers. It seemed too close to preparing for a fight. Grandma closed the folder. I am not asking you to use any of this against your sister, she said. I am asking you to understand that I see the whole picture. A month later, she asked me to drive her to Wellington Federal Bank. She wore her navy coat and the pearl earrings my grandfather had given her on their 40th anniversary. She told me she needed to update some estate paperwork. I assumed it was routine. Grandma had always been careful with documents. She had a modest investment account, the house, and a life insurance policy that had been in place for years. I did not ask questions because she had taught me that helping was not the same as taking over. At the bank, we met a woman named Marcia Holley from Estate Services. Marcia knew Grandma by name. She spoke slowly, explained each form, and never made Grandma feel like she needed someone else to answer for her. Then Grandma asked whether I could be listed as the designated family contact for a safe deposit box after her death, together with her attorney. I looked up. Grandma, why me? She smiled in a way that was both kind and firm. Because you know how to wait until all the pages are on the table. Marcia explained that my name on the contact instruction did not give me access to the box while Grandma was alive. It did not tell me what was inside. It only told the bank whom to notify after her death, once the attorney had confirmed the legal process. I signed where I was told to sign. I did not ask what was in the box. I thought it was another careful habit. When we walked back to the car, Grandma took my hand. Nora, she said, if people tell you something is simple, read it twice. I laughed because the sentence sounded like her. I did not know it was a warning. Grandma's health changed gradually. First, she got tired after grocery shopping. Then she began forgetting small things, not names or dates, but whether she had already made tea. The doctor said she was still capable of making her own decisions. She just needed more rest, more help, and someone to listen when she said something felt different. I coordinated the home care schedule because that was what I did for a living. I asked questions, compared documents, and made sure the person who needed help was not lost in the system. My mother came by with casseroles and folded laundry. Lauren came with flowers, stories from work, and an energy that could make Grandma smile even on hard days. For a while, it worked. Then the pharmacy sent a notice saying one of Grandma's medications was no longer covered at the same rate. Lauren told everyone she had taken care of it. She had called the pharmacy once and been put on hold. I spent 40 minutes with the insurer, found an authorization error, and had the charge corrected. At Sunday dinner, my mother thanked Lauren for handling the problem. Lauren accepted the gratitude without looking at me. Under the table, Grandma rested her hand on my wrist. Later, as I helped her into bed, she whispered, You do not have to correct every story, but you should remember who keeps telling them. That was the year I began saving copies of every invoice, appointment note, and email connected to Grandma's care. I did not do it because I wanted to build a case against my sister. I did it because paperwork was my language, and because Grandma had taught me that vague memories can become weapons when a family is afraid to name what happened. The blue ledger grew thicker. Grandma kept writing in it herself until her hands shook too much. When that happened, she asked me to read her entries aloud so she could check the dates. She still made every decision. She still signed her name, but she wanted her records to be clear. One afternoon, while the home care aide was making tea, Grandma asked me to bring the ledger from the desk. "You have always thought I kept this because I did not trust people," she said. I did not know what to say. "It is not that," she continued. "I kept it because I loved people enough to want the facts, to survive the feelings." She turned to a page where my sister's name appeared several times. There were loans for rent, car repairs, business supplies, and a credit card balance that had become an emergency just before Christmas. There were entries for me, too. A used car contribution when I was 22, groceries during a difficult semester, a graduation gift. The difference was not a judgment. It was a history. "I have helped Lauren more," Grandma said. "That does not mean I love her more. It means she needed more, and sometimes she asked before she learned how to plan." I looked at the numbers and felt a familiar tightness in my chest. "She will say you favored me," I said. Grandma smiled sadly. "People often call fairness favoritism when they do not like the answer." She placed her palm over the ledger. "When the time comes, do not let anyone rush you. Let the whole record speak." That was the last real conversation we had about the bank vault. 2 months later, Grandma had a stroke. It was not the dramatic kind from television. It was quiet and terrible. She became tired, then confused, then still. I was with her at the hospital when she opened her eyes for a few seconds and looked at me. "Keep the truth gentle," she whispered. Then she slept. She died early Monday morning, before the sun rose. By noon, relatives were calling. By evening, Lauren had started a group message about flowers, food, and who would speak at the service. She wrote that she wanted to make sure Grandma got the elegant farewell she deserved. I read the message from the chair, beside my kitchen window, and thought of the safe deposit box. I thought of Marcia's careful voice. I thought of the blue ledger in my bag. I did not yet know what Grandma had placed inside the bank vault. But I knew one thing. Whatever was there, Lauren did not know about it. The funeral home was full 3 days later. There were white lily, framed photographs, and the low murmur of people who had come to say kind things about a woman they had not called in months. Grandma's picture sat near the entrance, taken on her 81st birthday. Her hair was silver, her eyes bright, her smile patient. Lauren stood near the guest book in a black dress that looked carefully chosen for photographs. She greeted everyone by name. She hugged cousins she had not visited in years. She told stories about Grandma's cinnamon rolls and her advice about relationships. People listened because Lauren had always known how to make herself sound like the person closest to the center of a room. I stayed near the photo table. I spoke quietly with neighbors. I thanked the home care aide. I made sure the little bowl of hard candies Grandma loved was placed beside the guest book, because it felt like something she would notice. After the service, the immediate family gathered in a smaller room off the lobby. My mother sat by the window with both hands around a paper cup of coffee. Uncle Robert leaned against the wall. 2 cousins remained because Lauren had asked them to stay. That should have told me something. Lauren reached into her bag and pulled out a photocopy. "I found this in Grandma's desk," she said. "I think everyone needs to see it." The document was old. I could tell before she read a word. The paper was gray around the edges. The signatures were faint. It named my mother as executor and described a simple distribution of personal property and the house. Lauren read one sentence slowly, almost ceremonially. "I leave my personal residence and remaining assets to my beloved granddaughter, Laddie Bennett, with the hope she will use them to build a stable life." My mother made a small sound. Uncle Robert frowned. One cousin looked at me, as if waiting for me to break. Then Lauren turned her face toward mine. "I am sorry, Nora," she said. "I know this is hard, but Grandma made her wishes clear. There is nothing here for you." For a moment, every old scene inside me woke up at once. The fundraiser envelope, the dinner where my work was erased, the medication claim. The way Lauren could speak with confidence and make other people feel foolish for needing proof. A younger version of me would have grabbed the paper. I would have tried to explain the bank call. I would have asked why a photocopy was being read like a verdict before anyone had called an attorney. But Grandma had told me not to let people rush me. So I looked at the date on the paper. It was 11 years old. I looked at Lauren's hands. Her fingers were shaking slightly beneath the sleeves of her dress. Then I said, "Thank you for showing us that." Lauren blinked. "That is all you have to say, for now," I replied. The room went quiet in a different way. Not because anyone understood what was happening, but because I had failed to play the part Lauren expected. She needed me to react. Without my reaction, she had only a document with no context, and a claim she wanted everyone else to finish for her. I walked outside into the cold air. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. The voicemail from Wellington Federal Bank was waiting. I listened to it once, then I called back. "Marcia," Holly answered on the third ring. Her voice was soft when she said she was sorry for my loss. "Ms. Bennett," she said, "your grandmother left a safe deposit box under estate instructions. Her attorney has already notified us that an appointment will be requested. Your name is listed as the family contact to be present when the box is opened under proper authorization." I asked whether Lauren was listed. There was a pause. "I cannot discuss every name or document over the phone," Marcia said. "But I can tell you the instructions are specific. Please have the estate attorney contact us when the appropriate paperwork is ready." I thanked her and ended the call. When I went back inside, Lauren was telling my mother that we should begin clearing Grandma's house quickly because the property will need attention before anything happens. I watched her for a moment. Then I wrote down the exact words she used in the Notes app on my phone. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I was finally done pretending I had not heard what people said. That evening, my mother called me 3 times. I did not answer the first 2 calls because I needed time to think, without someone else's panic filling the room. On the 3rd call, I picked up. "Nora," she said before I could speak, "please do not make this harder than it has to be. Lauren is devastated." "We all are." I stood at my kitchen counter with Grandma's blue ledger open in front of me. "I am not making anything harder," I said. "I am asking that we wait for the estate attorney and the bank documents." My mother sighed. Lauren found a will. She found a photocopy of an old will. Maybe it was the only one. Maybe, I said. But we do not know that yet. There was a silence that felt familiar. It was the silence of being treated as difficult because I would not agree to something before the facts were clear. "She said you are trying to take this from her," my mother finally said. The words hurt, though I had expected them. "I have not taken anything," I replied. "I have not even asked for anything. I am asking for the legal process to happen." The next morning, I called the number Grandma had written on an index card tucked into the back of the ledger. The card said, Avery Cole, Estate Counsel. Avery's office was above a bookstore downtown. The waiting room had shelves full of legal guides that no one had opened in years, and a small painting of a lake in winter. Avery was in her late 60s, with silver hair, a navy suit, and an expression that made people lower their voices without being asked. I showed her the photocopy Lauren had read at the funeral. I told her about the bank call. I brought the blue ledger, the folder of care records, and every message I had received since Grandma died. Avery did not react dramatically. She did not tell me I had been right. She did not tell me Lauren had been wrong. She read each page, asked questions, and took notes. "This photocopy may be relevant," she said. "It may also have been replaced. We will not make assumptions until we review original documents and confirm the bank instructions." I felt my shoulders loosen. Avery explained that Grandma had updated estate planning documents more than once over the years. That alone was not suspicious. It was common. The important question was which documents were valid, what property they governed, and whether the bank box contained the original records. "What should I do now?" I asked. "Do not argue in group messages," she said. "Do not sign anything. Do not remove property from the house. Keep a written record of every communication and let the process be slower than their pressure." That sentence became my boundary. Lauren came to my apartment that night. She did not call first. She knocked hard enough that my neighbor opened her door across the hall. "Are you trying to embarrass me?" Lauren asked when I opened the door. "No, Mom says you went to a lawyer. I spoke with Grandma's estate attorney." Lauren crossed her arms. "You always make things sound so official. Like you are the only person who knows how to do anything." "I am asking questions," I said. "That is all. Grandma told me I would have the house. Maybe she did. We will find out what she signed." Lauren stared at me, and for a second I saw the little girl who had cried before anyone could ask the next question. But she was not a child anymore. "Neither was I. Why can you not just let this be easy?" she asked. I looked at her carefully. Easy for who? Her expression changed, not into remorse, not yet, into anger at being asked to name what she wanted. "You think you are better because you keep records," she said. "No," I told her. "I keep records because the story keeps changing." She left without another word. That night, I wrote one message in the family group chat. Grandma's estate is being handled through her attorney and the bank's estate process. I will not discuss distributions or documents through group messages. Please allow the legal review to be completed before deciding what happened. It was not dramatic. It did not explain every wound. It did not convince anyone, but it was true. And for the first time, I did not apologize for saying it. The appointment at Wellington Federal Bank was scheduled for the following Friday. In the days before it, pressure came from every direction. Lauren sent my mother links to articles about people manipulating elderly relatives. She told cousins that I had probably convinced Grandma to change the will while she was sick. An aunt from Ohio wrote that whatever had happened, it was not worth destroying the family over money. I read every message once and saved it. At work, I sat with patients who were frightened by bills they did not understand. I listened to people explain why they had delayed care, why they had signed something without reading it, why they had believed a person in authority because they were too tired to ask another question. Their stories reminded me that pressure works best when people are already overwhelmed. I promised myself I would not make a decision from exhaustion. Avery asked me to bring anything that could help establish a timeline of Grandma's care and decision-making. I gave her the records I had saved, appointment confirmations, invoices, notes from the home care agency, and the ledger. I did not know which papers would matter. I only knew Grandma had wanted a complete picture. Avery reviewed the ledger with a pencil in her hand. "This does not decide the estate by itself," she said, "but it may explain why certain provisions were written. And it shows that your grandmother kept consistent records over many years." She also told me something I had not expected. Grandma had visited Avery's office alone twice the previous autumn. Her physician had completed a capacity letter after a routine evaluation. The meetings had been witnessed by two independent staff members. No beneficiary had been in the room. She was very clear about wanting the documents to reflect the whole history, Avery said. The phrase stayed with me, the whole history. Not the version Lauren could tell at a funeral. Not the version my mother wanted to believe because it would make the next steps easier. The whole history. On Thursday, my mother came to my apartment. She looked smaller than she had at the funeral, as if grief had finally reached the place where anger had been sitting. "I do not want to lose either of you," she said. Majite. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where the blue ledger had become part of my daily life. "You are not losing me," I told her. "But I cannot pretend I do not have questions just because questions upset Lauren." My mother looked down at her cup. "She says you have always resented her." "I have resented being erased," I said. "That is not the same thing." For the first time, my mother did not correct me. She said I should have noticed more. I wanted to tell her yes. I wanted to list every moment. She had chosen the easier story. But I saw how tired she was, how confused, how frightened of losing the family shape she had known. "You can start noticing now," I said. The next morning, I wore a gray sweater and brought a folder with copies of every document. I did not know what we would find in the bank vault. I did not know whether it would help me, hurt me, or leave everything exactly as Lauren believed. That was the hardest part. Waiting for proof means accepting that the proof may not give you the answer you want. But I had learned from Grandma that truth was not a weapon you chose only when it favored you. It was a responsibility you accepted before you knew where it would lead. Wellington Federal Bank was quieter than I remembered. The lobby had high ceilings, dark wood counters, and a marble floor that made every footstep sound deliberate. Avery arrived first. My mother came a few minutes later, holding her purse with both hands. Lauren entered last with an attorney she had hired, a younger man named Michael Rusk, who introduced himself politely and said very little. Marcia Holly met us near the estate services desk. She explained the process in clear terms. The bank would retrieve the safe deposit box. The attorney would confirm the estate authorization. The contents would be inventoried in a private viewing room. The bank would not interpret legal documents, but it would confirm that the box had remained sealed under its procedures until that morning. Lauren exhaled sharply. "This seems excessive," she said. "We already have the will." Avery looked at her. "Then you have nothing to fear from a complete review." We passed through a secured door and down a hallway that smelled faintly of metal and old paper. At the end was the vault. The door was taller than I expected, round at the edges, with thick steel bolts that looked almost theatrical until I stood close enough to see the scratches around the lock. The bank vault did not feel dramatic. It felt quiet, it felt practical. It was built to protect things people were afraid to lose. Marcia retrieved a small grey box from a row of narrow drawers. She placed it in a private room with a round table and 6 chairs. 2 keys were required. One was held by the bank. The other was sealed, inside an envelope, labeled in Grandma's handwriting. Avery opened the envelope after Marcia recorded the inventory. Inside was the 2nd key and a note. For Nora and Avery, open this only when everyone has had a chance to sit down. Do not let anyone rush the truth. Helen. My throat tightened. Lauren read the note over Avery's shoulder. Why would she write that? She asked. No one answered. Avery placed the key in the lock. Marcia turned the bank's key. The box opened with a small, ordinary click. Inside were 3 sealed envelopes, a dark blue folder, a thin file labeled Medical Capacity Confirmation, a velvet pouch, and Grandma's silver fountain pen. On top rested a letter addressed to Lauren and me. Avery asked Marcia to witness the inventory. She wrote down each item. Then Avery opened the letter. Grandma's handwriting filled 3 pages. She began by saying she loved both of us. She wrote that family conflict can make people turn old hurts into simple stories, and that she did not want either granddaughter reduced to the role the other had assigned her. She wrote that Lauren had brought joy and courage to the family, even when her choices had required support. She wrote that Nora had brought steadiness and care, even when no one had announced it. Then she wrote the sentence that changed the room. The photocopy of my 2013 will is not my final instruction. My final while my family crack explaining my decisions are enclosed. No prior copy conversation, promise, or her assumption should be allowed to replace the documents is signed with independent counsel. Lauren's face lost color. Avery opened the dark blue folder. Inside was the original will, signed the previous October, witnessed, notarized, and accompanied by the physician's capacity letter. There was also a trust agreement that named Avery as independent trustee for the first year and named me as successor co-trustee for administrative purposes after that. Lauren sat back in her chair. That cannot be right, she said. Avery did not argue. She began reading. The final will placed Grandma's house, savings, and investment accounts into the family continuity trust. My mother would have the right to live in the house for up to 1 year or receive a housing allowance if she chose to move. The house would not be transferred immediately to either granddaughter. After expenses and my mother's housing support, the remaining trust assets would be distributed according to a formula that considered documented. Financial support already given during Grandma's lifetime, the blue ledger mattered, not as punishment, as context. Grandma's records showed that Lauren had received substantial assistance over more than a decade: rent payments, car repairs, business deposits, credit card relief, and emergency loans that were never repaid. My support had been smaller and mostly practical. The trust did not erase Lauren. It did not call her bad. It simply acknowledged what had already been given. Then Avery opened the velvet pouch. It held the pearl earrings Grandma wore on special occasions and a note naming them for Lauren. Grandma had remembered everything: the house, the money, the help, the hurt, and the parts of each of us she still loved. The bank vault did not end the conflict. It changed its shape. Lauren left the viewing room before Avery had finished explaining the trust. Her attorney followed her. My mother remained at the table, staring at the original will as if it were written in a language she could not speak. I did not know, she said. I know, I answered. She began to cry. I should have known. I wanted to say that she should have. I wanted to tell her how many times I had watched her accept Lauren's version because it was easier then asking another question. But the bank lobby was not a courtroom, and grief had already taken enough from her. "We are going to do this carefully," I said. That is what Grandma wanted. By that evening, the messages started again. A cousin wrote, "I heard you made Grandma change her will when she was sick. That does not sound like you." An aunt wrote, "No amount of money is worth splitting the family." Lauren posted nothing publicly, but she called relatives one by one. I knew because they told me. Her new story was that I had manipulated Grandma, that Avery was my lawyer, that the bank vault had been planned behind her back. For 10 minutes, I sat with my phone in my hand and wanted to send everyone photographs of the capacity letter, the independent witness statements, the sealed bank instructions, and the note Grandma had written. Then I remembered something from my work. Documents cannot help people who have already decided not to read them, so I sent one response. Grandma's estate is being administered by her independent attorney under final legal documents, signed with witnesses and medical confirmation. I will not debate private financial details by text message. I hope everyone will allow the process to finish before deciding what happened. It was not a defense of every part of me. It was a boundary. Lauren called late that night. "You planned this," she said when I answered. "I did not. You knew about the box. Grandma listed me as a contact. I did not know what was inside. She always trusted you more." I closed my eyes. "She trusted the records," I said. "That is not the same thing." Lauren laughed once, without humor. "Of course you would say that. You always make yourself look like the saint." The words hit the old bruise. For years, I had been afraid of sounding like I thought I was better, so I had stayed quiet. I had allowed other people to describe my work, my loyalty, and my feelings because I did not want to be accused of keeping score. But Grandma's ledger had taught me something different. Naming what happened is not the same as making yourself a saint. "I did not write the will," I said. "And I did not stand at her funeral and tell you that you got nothing." There was silence on the line. "So this is revenge," Lauren said. "No," I answered. "Revenge would be trying to make you feel as small as you tried to make me feel. I am not doing that. I am letting the documents say what they say." She hung up. The following week, Avery scheduled a formal estate meeting. Lauren's attorney requested copies of the documents. Avery provided them through the proper channels. She also asked that no one enter Grandma's house alone or remove property without a written inventory. That request made Lauren furious. She said Grandma's house was her home too. She said she needed to collect personal items before I took control. She said the family was being treated like criminals. Avery replied, calmly, that an inventory protects every beneficiary. The more Lauren pressed, the clearer the difference became between what she said she wanted and what she feared. She did not only want Grandma's things. She wanted the old pattern back. She wanted to speak first, decide the story, and have everyone else treat my silence as permission. But the bank vault had opened. The original documents existed now. And I was no longer willing to disappear to make someone else comfortable. The estate meeting took place 10 days later in Avery Cole's conference room. It was a long room with a polished table, tall windows, and a shelf full of binders labeled by year. My mother sat beside Uncle Robert. Lauren sat across from me with Michael Rusk, her attorney. I had no attorney of my own. Avery was not my personal lawyer. She was Grandma's independent estate attorney and trustee. That distinction mattered to me. I did not want a private victory. I wanted a fair process. Avery began with the timeline. She placed the 2013 photocopy on the table first. She explained that it was a valid document when it was signed, but it had been replaced by the final will and trust signed the previous October. She placed the capacity confirmation beside it, then the witness statement. Then the bank's affidavit confirming the safe deposit box had remained sealed until our authorized appointment. The relevant documents are the final documents, Avery said. Not a prior copy, not an informal promise, and not a memory of a conversation. Lauren's attorney asked whether Grandma had been capable when she signed the final will. Avery handed him the physician's letter. It stated that Grandma had been alert, oriented, and able to understand the nature of her property, the people who might inherit, and the consequences of her decisions. He asked whether I had been present at the meetings. Avery handed him the appointment log. I had not been present. Neither had Lauren. Grandma had met with Avery alone, then with independent witnesses. He asked whether the bank box could have been altered. Avery handed him Marsha's affidavit and the bank's sealed inventory record. Each question had an answer. Not because I had set a trap, because Grandma had lived her life with care. Then Avery placed the blue ledger on the table. The room changed when she opened it. There was nothing dramatic on the pages, no angry notes, insults, only dates, amounts, and brief descriptions. April 2018, rent after studio closure. September 2019, car repair. November 2020, business deposit. January 2022, emergency credit card payment. June 2023, apartment security deposit. For me, the entries were fewer and smaller. Graduation gift, used car contribution, grocery support during school, a medical copay after a bad flu. Avery explained that the Family Continuity Trust did not take anything from Lauren. It recognized prior support as part of the total picture. Grandma had written the formula herself with counsel so that no one could later claim generosity. Had never happened. This is not a penalty, Avery said. It is an equalization provision. Ms. Bennett chose to account for substantial lifetime support before calculating the remaining distribution. Lauren stood so quickly that her chair scraped the floor. She kept score? She asked. Avery's voice stayed level. She kept records. Lauren looked at me, as if I had written every line in the ledger. You knew about this, she said. I knew Grandma kept records, I said. I did not know what she had put in the trust. Of course she picked you. You always had to be the good one. The old instinct rose in me. The instinct to shrink, to say something that would make her feel better, to explain that I was not good, only tired. Instead, I looked at the documents. I did not make Grandma write anything, I said. And I did not announce at her funeral that you were being left nothing. No one spoke. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. Uncle Robert looked down at the ledger. Michael Rusk asked whether the trust allowed any flexibility. Avery said yes, within limits. The trust provided Lauren with a designated distribution, the pearl earrings, and a separate education and debt counseling allocation if she chose to use it. It provided my mother with housing support. The remaining assets would be distributed after the house was sold and expenses were settled, with a larger share to me under the documented equalization formula. I would also serve, with Avery, in the administrative role Grandma had assigned. Lauren said the arrangement was unfair. Avery did not argue about feelings. She repeated the facts. Grandma had received independent advice. She had signed final documents. She had documented her reasoning. The bank vault had preserved those documents. The trust was valid. That was the authority's scene I had spent my whole life. waiting for without knowing it. No one stood up and called Lauren a liar. No one forced her to apologize. The records simply remained on the table, too complete to be shouted over. At the end of the meeting, Avery asked whether anyone had questions about the next steps. I had one. Can we make sure the house inventory is respectful? I asked. Grandma's things are not evidence. They are still hers. Avery nodded. Lauren looked at me then, not with anger exactly, but with something closer to confusion. For years, she had expected my silence to mean I could be pushed aside. Now, she was learning that calm did not mean I had no limits. The legal process took months. That was another thing movies rarely show. Truth can be satisfying, but it is not quick. There were forms, appraisals, tax documents, repairs to the house, and 100 small decisions that had to be made carefully. My mother chose to move into a smaller condominium near the library, where she had volunteered when she was younger. The trust paid for the transition exactly as Grandma had directed. She did not lose her home. She was given time and support to choose her next one. Grandma's yellow house on Hawthorne Avenue was eventually sold to a couple with a toddler and a baby on the way. I met them once when the inspection was complete. The woman told me she loved the porch swing. The man said he wanted to plant a small vegetable garden in the back. I thought I would feel destroyed when the sale closed. Instead, I felt grateful that the house would become part of someone else's ordinary life. Grandma had never wanted a museum. She wanted safety, usefulness, and a place where people could breathe. Lauren received the pearl earrings, a modest distribution, and the option to use the counseling and education allocation. At first, she refused it. She said accepting it would make her look like a failure. Avery told her that accepting structured support was not failure. The trust had been designed to help her without repeating the old pattern of emergency rescues with no plan behind them. I did not speak during that conversation. It was not my decision. My share was larger than I had expected. For several weeks, I could not bring myself to touch it. Money had become so tangled with grief and accusation that opening my banking app made me feel guilty. Then I remembered what Grandma had said when I got my first job. Enough is not a number. Enough is the ability to make one good decision at a time. I paid off my remaining student loans. I fixed the leak in my apartment roof that I had been postponing for 2 years. Then I met with the hospital foundation and started a small patient support fund in Grandma's name. It helped families cover transportation, medication gaps, meal cards, and the quiet costs that can turn an illness into a crisis. I chose that because Grandma's help had always been practical. She believed care should change something real. The blue ledger stayed on my desk. The silver fountain pen from the bank vault sat beside it. I did not use the pen often because the ink flowed too heavily, but I liked knowing it was there. Lauren and I did not speak for 8 months. During that time, I heard things through relatives. She had taken a job at a conference company, mostly working on contracts, vendor lists, and inventory. It was not glamorous. It was also steady. She began paying down a debt that had followed her for years. Then one rainy afternoon, she called. I almost let it go to voicemail. When I answered, she was quiet for so long that I thought the call had dropped. I got a job, she said finally. I heard. It is not what I imagined. That does not mean it is not good. She laughed once, softly. I was awful to you, she said, at the funeral. Before that too, the apology was incomplete. She did not name every lie. She did not say she understood every damage. But she had stepped out from behind certainty long enough to say something true. "I know," I said. "I thought Grandma loved you more." I looked at the rain moving down my window. "I think Grandma loved us differently because we needed different things," I told her. But she did not love either of us less. Lauren did not answer immediately. "I do not know how to fix this," she said. "You do not fix it in one phone call," I said. "You tell the truth when it is harder than the lie. Then you keep doing that." We did not become close overnight. We did not become the sisters people imagine when they hear the word reconciliation. We had coffee twice. We spoke about Grandma once without arguing. That was enough for where we were. Consequences did not make us enemies. They made it impossible to keep pretending the old rules were fair. A year after Grandma died, I drove past Hawthorne Avenue on my way home from work. The new owners had painted the shutters a soft blue. The porch swing was still there, though the squeak had probably been fixed. A small bicycle leaned against the fence. For a moment, I felt the old sadness rise. Then I remembered that a home is not only an address. Grandma had left pieces of herself in the things she taught me. The way I read a form before I signed it. The way I kept a record when something mattered. The way I refused to confuse quiet with weak. The bank vault did not give me revenge. It gave me proof. There is a difference. Revenge would have been standing in front of the family and trying to make Lauren feel as small as she had tried to make me feel. I could have used the documents to humiliate her. I could have made every old resentment public. But Grandma had not protected me so that I could become cruel. She had protected me so that I could stop being erased. That is what quiet justice meant to me. It meant allowing the truth to have consequences without turning pain into a weapon. It meant accepting a fair inheritance without apologizing for the care I had given. It meant loving my mother without letting her fear decide what I was allowed to ask. It meant allowing Lauren's apology to be incomplete, without pretending the past had vanished. If this family conflict story stayed with you, remember this: you do not have to match someone else's volume to be heard. You do not need to argue with every false story while you are still gathering the facts. Keep your records. Ask the hard questions. Let the truth have time to arrive. And when it does, let it change your life without letting it harden your heart. Have you ever had someone in your family decide your place before you had a chance to speak? Would you have confronted Lauren at the funeral, waited for the bank vault, or walked away completely? And do you think Grandma's ledger was keeping score or protecting the truth? Share your story or your opinion in the comments. Subscribe for more family conflict stories about family betrayal, quiet revenge, inheritance, boundaries, and the strength it takes to choose truth over noise.